Hello everyone, it's nice to be back again, it's been a while. I had meant to make two other videos these days on two Malazian topics, but I feel that speaking up on this particular matter is important. And so today I will attempt to explore some aspects of the recent controversy that perhaps haven't been voiced before. I would like to start by thanking all those who have raised their voices so far in support of our community and in support of Stephen Erikson. Today I add mine to theirs. I would also like to make it clear that while I am a fierce supporter of Stephen Erikson, my judgment is not impaired by it, and that when I present my point of view, I believe it applies to all authors and creators of any kind. In order to place things in context, I would like to start with a short story. I'm going to go back in time to when James Cameron's Avatar was released. I loved that movie. I watched it twice in cinema in the first 2 days after it was released. A week later, I mentioned it to my father. A bit of a wasted attempt to begin with, since he had always been of the opinion that it's better to wait 1 year or so and see a movie in the comfort of your home rather than go outside, put up with a crowd, and also have to pay for it. He hadn't seen a movie in a cinema for at least a decade, if not more. But I tried anyway. He told me that he hated the movie and that he will never watch it. So I asked him if he knew what the movie was about, and he said he didn't need to. Such an answer from a man who had always been the intellectual type was surprising. So I asked him why. His answer? He had read somewhere that the Pope had criticized the movie, that the Pope claimed the movie was attempting to create or impose a new religion or some such. Now, my father is neither Catholic nor religious, but a lot of people think highly of the Pope. A lot of people whom he doesn't know personally either. I dared him to watch it and then pass judgment based on his own mind, and to my surprise, he accepted the dare. His final feedback? He hated the concept of an alien world because he doesn't like the science fiction genre, but he liked the story. He thought the Pope's criticism made no sense whatsoever. It wasn't a great artistic movie in his opinion, but it was good entertainment, which is as much praise as I would get from someone who thinks that cinematography died at the end of the 70s. This, in turn, brings me to book reviewers and the trust that people put in their words. I've always thought of readers as intelligent people, people who quest and think and feel and grow as a result of all that. At the same time, we live in an age where time and personal comfort are voraciously sought after commodities. People just don't have the time to read something they won't enjoy, and so they seek the comfort of certainty in someone else's experience in order to make that decision for themselves. There is nothing wrong in wanting somebody else's feedback. Nothing wrong with doing some scouting before deciding. But I would warn about the trap of certainty. Make up your own mind. No matter how good someone's intentions, no matter how well prepared or ill prepared their opinion, in the end, what makes the difference between a good experience and a bad one is one's own taste and life experience. Do get a feedback, but leave the final judgment to yourselves based on your own knowledge rather than somebody else's opinion of it. Don't take the Pope on his word. This brings me to my next topic, the one about the very concept of art critics. In my 8th grade, we learned in music history about a composer named Richard Strauss. He is a celebrated composer now, but his contemporaries didn't like him much. Our teacher gave us a small music history trivia. An art critic of the time had supposedly written a review in a newspaper about him. And he wrote, "What a shame that he is named Richard but not Wagner, and Strauss but not Johann." I was about 13 or 14 years old at the time, but the meanness of that review made up my mind about art critics. You may call it book reviewers, but in the end, books are works of art, and book reviewing is passing critical judgment on the artistic product that is a book. It is proof of entitlement to demand kindness and respect, yet offer none in return. Book reviewers owe to the author the same respect that they claim for themselves, not only to the authors, but also to the works that they analyze. There used to be a time when an art critic had to have a solid artistic education in order to be hired for such a position by a newspaper. The invention of the internet changed all that. Now anybody who feels up to reading a book and is not afraid of the camera can be an art critic. And there's nothing wrong with that, not necessarily. But all such people need to remember that this isn't just fun. This isn't just about reputation or wounded pride. What they do affects the livelihood of authors, and while honesty is a must, respect and kindness should be equally important. There are very few people in this world who can make the claim that they have left it a better place than it was when they were born. Steven Erikson is one such man. A lot of people reached out to him through the years. People who struggle with substance addiction, war veterans, abused, suicidal, hurt, broken people who wrote to him to thank him for his books, to thank him for the kindness, the respect, the empathy and compassion, and the eerily accurate understanding of their trauma. People who wrote to him to tell him how his books changed their lives and helped them deal with their demons and heal their pain, including women who have experienced the trauma of rape. Women who did read the books and they did know what they were talking about. This is an achievement that no book reviewer can claim, at least not to my knowledge. There are very few people in this world who can claim that they had a contribution to the cultural patrimony of the world. Steven Erikson can make that claim. And so when someone evaluates his work, this is something that should be kept in mind. It is easy to splatter mud, to break and destroy. To create, however, not so much. So anyone who would review the creation of someone else, be it the work of a writer, composer, scientist, or any other type of creator, should do so keeping in mind their own inability to create. Have an opinion, even a critical one, but express it in full awareness of the fact that you can't create yourself that which you are criticizing. The next topic I would like to address is some of the characteristics of Erikson's writing. He explores a wide variety of themes and he does it from different angles. Some of these views belong to him. Others are intellectual explorations. Some are serious, some are humoristic. It's what intelligent people do, you know. They are able to entertain thoughts and ideas that they don't necessarily subscribe to, yet they have the intellectual ability to consider and analyze them. Another thing he does and does well is to include verisimilitude in his books. No author in this world has ever created a world where everything is picture perfect, everything is pink, dripping with sugar, honey and milk, a world where people live in a Garden of Eden and everyone behaves in a 100% decent manner. Erikson inspired himself from our own damaged, imperfect world with a purpose. A world where slavery, rape, forced prostitution, sexual mutilation, and a host of other evils do exist. And he has explored each of these themes in depth. True to his style, he did so from different angles, using different approaches, but never, not once, disrespectful. Which brings me to the scene in Toll the Hounds and the supposed impropriety of that scene. I'm going to use, to begin with, the previous argument, that of verisimilitude. If rape happens in this world, why not in a book? If stealing happens in this world, why not in a book? If adultery happens in this world, why not in a book? So let's get to the scene. We have a thief returned from an ordeal that took him away from his wife and turned him into a slave. And now, after 10 years, he is finally back home, only to find out that he owes a fortune to a moneylender for accepting a free lunch that wasn't all that free, 10 years ago. Interest accumulated over time, you see, a moneylender's interest. The people working with him will grab our poor thief and kill him if he doesn't have the money. So he figures he will break into the lender's house, steal his secret stash, pay back what he supposedly owes, and save his life. He makes it past the guards only to face another problem. The money is in the bedroom somewhere, and the man's wife is awake. From the context of the scene, we can tell that her husband is into role-playing in the bedroom. And yes, that is a thing that people do in our world as well. As soon as he goes in, she thinks her husband is pretending to be a thief. Our man now has two options: play the part and save himself, or drop the ball and get caught. So he decides to play the part. The woman is pleased by the performance, and when he asks her about the money, she tells him it's under the bed. This is the scene in a nutshell. It can be claimed that she didn't know that that wasn't her husband, and that he took advantage of an innocent. In which case, you would say that this character behaved in a dishonorable manner. Your point being? Every book has a villain, does it not? It is your right as a reader to decide what is right and what is wrong. But let's continue. As a woman, I know I would recognize my husband by more than just a husky voice claiming to be him. You know, size, shape of his body, smell, touch. A different approach to the scene, the humoristic one, which I believe is the one that Erikson went for, is a less heavy exploration of the theme of adultery. The woman called her husband sliverfishy, and we know from that scene that he needed potions to get an erection. For once, she was going to get something better, so she played along to force his hand into giving it to her. She wanted something better, and she got it. She also got away with her dignity intact, since the pretense allowed her to claim to innocence. She did not, in good faith, betray her husband, as long as she could say that she believed it was him, right? And she also got the pleasure she sought. She got to have her cake and eat it. There couldn't have been a better outcome. I fail to see where the rape is here. If you would raise the issue that adultery is a serious topic, then you will find it treated properly from a very different perspective through the point of view of Chalice and Cutter in the same book. Proof that Erikson is very much aware of the seriousness of the moral implications of cheating. The fact that he chose to treat the same theme seriously on one side and with humor on the other only proves the versatility of thought and the intelligence of the man, as well as his willingness to entertain a point of view that doesn't necessarily belong to him. The theme of rape has been explored deeply, compassionately, respectfully, with two other characters. So the accusation that he treats rape lightly is unfounded, something those who have read the books do know. And even if you still want to claim that the scene that Liene took out of context is disturbing somehow, I will go back to the issue of verisimilitude. Rape, adultery, thieving, cheating, lying, taking advantage of people, all these things happen in real life. Writers have been portraying the evils of the world in literature since the dawn of art, with the purpose of calling attention to it, in the hope that putting these issues on the spotlight may help change things for the better. Why should this be valid for all authors but not for Erikson? And so, regardless of the lens you choose to use for understanding the scene, there is nothing wrong about it, not in my opinion at least. Lastly, I would like to approach the topics of power imbalance, freedom of speech, and engaging from a place of ignorance. We have all been children at some point, and children know best what imbalance of power feels like. A mother, a grandfather, a teacher, a neighbor, everybody has more power than a child. And the child himself discovers as he grows that he has more power than his younger siblings. Claiming that things change once the child is an adult would be wishful thinking. Imbalance of power is one of the default states of existence. The president of a country has more power than the reporter that interviews him. An employer has more power than his employee. A cop has more power than the person whose driving license he is asking to see. Every single individual in this world has both more power and less power than other individuals at any given time. Does an author have more power than a book reviewer? Well, how do you define power? Do you mean, does a reviewer have the power to shape the minds of people who believe she is informed, and in doing so damaging not only the feelings and reputation of an author, but possibly his livelihood as well? Or do you mean that a book reviewer's feelings could get hurt by the remote possibility of an author providing his feedback, possibly positive, probably positive, on her review? You tell me where the imbalance of power really lies. I happen to be a firm believer in the right of freedom of speech. Let's explore this human right, and yes, authors happen to be humans as well, from the point of view of power imbalance. Should a mother not be allowed to address her child, whether to criticize or praise, because she has more power than him? Should a teacher not be allowed to provide professional feedback to his students because he has more power than them? Who is the tyrant that gets to decide how much power is too much and who should get silence? Who is so perfect as to stand above the law and dictate which people should make exception from the most basic human rights? Everybody has the right to express themselves, anywhere, anytime. It is ethical to do so, which is why there is the law for it. And since we are talking about ethics, have you answered my previous question? Where did the imbalance of power really lie? I find it painful to see that there are people out there who believe that their own personal comfort is more important than human rights. You know, that pesky little declaration that says, among other things, that everyone has the right to freedom of opinion and expression. This right includes freedom to hold opinions without interference and to seek, receive, and impart information and ideas through any media and regardless of frontiers. That some feel entitled to deprive a small minority of people, in this case authors, from this right, and that they think it is a positive thing, all in the name of their own comfort, is something that I don't understand and something that saddens me profoundly. Because it says something about the state of our societies, the ever bigger craving for comfort to the point where we are willing to be unethical in order to have it. Which brings me to criticizing art from a place of ignorance. You want to evaluate a work of art? Go ahead. But first, make sure that you know what it is you are evaluating. I'm certain that all of us are aware when we don't know something. Liene certainly knew she didn't read the series, and that based on this fact, she didn't have the knowledge to do her job in a professional manner. Yet despite being aware of her own ignorance, she chose to lash out regardless. Against a man she didn't know. Against a man she never spoke to. Against a man that never spoke to her. Against a man who saved and continues to save lives through his writing. Against a man she knew nothing about other than hearsay with no context. And she used the influence she had on so many people who prefer to take the Pope on his word in order to hurt a man who never harmed her in any way. Maybe that was not her intention. I have no way of knowing that. But that was the effect of her actions. I know I have often been accused of being too passionate a fan of Erikson, and it always makes me smile because I have the context for it. As a very young child, I once attended a puppet show at a theater, and I remember how disappointed and even angry I felt because I could see the puppeteers. Seeing the makers of my fairy tale prevent me from pretending for the duration of the show that the story was real. And when I grew up and I picked up reading, I never wanted to see the author in my stories. I didn't want to see his personal opinions, his life experience, his desires, none of that. Knowing things about his life and who he is, gotta be kidding. If the author was a real person, with real feelings and a real existence, then the story was an invention. And I wanted the magic of the story to be real, if only for as long as I read. So I was never a fan of anyone. All that changed at the end of the 10th book of the Malazan series. And it was not because I changed my mind about it, I still feel the same. It changed because of the power of the message of Erikson's books. That power comes from a profound humanity, the likes of which I've never seen, neither in books nor in real life. As soon as the book was over, I went to the computer and I googled his name. But it wasn't enough. Because I didn't want to know who the author is. I didn't want to know how his creation process works, what was the source of inspiration for the books. I wanted to know the soul who was able to feel that way. I dare say that a lot of Malazan fans feel the same way. And the many people who have reached out to him in gratitude are a testimony to my claim. That is the reason why, I believe, the community responds in such a visceral manner whenever we perceive that he is attacked. To a lot of people who have read his books, Erikson isn't only a brilliant author, but also a person we respect and admire greatly. Not only because of the awesomeness of his work, but also, and perhaps more, for the human quality of the man. This, and the unfairness of the discrepancy between the man we know and the image of him that was painted, was, in my opinion, the main reason for the fandom's reaction. To be clear, I do not condone personal attacks on anyone. But I do understand where the anger was coming from. After all, when you sow wind, you harvest storm. For my closing, I have seen Malazan content creators these days addressing Steven Erikson directly, letting him know that he is welcomed on their channels, and I appreciate them for it. But I will do no such thing. I refuse to grant him a right that he already has. Besides, I believe that my position on this issue has been abundantly clear, to the point that a direct invitation will never be necessary. But I will do something else. I will reach out to Liene instead. She may not have had the context when she first approached this topic, but she does have it now. I would like to see a reaction from her that confirms that she did not mean to harm neither the work nor the man in clear following of the code of conduct she claims to abide by. That she had a good reason for not engaging with anyone who disagreed with her opinion in the comment section of her video. That she was not being deliberately dismissive of the concerns and points of view of others. But most importantly, that she never meant to feed the hate fest of comments that followed. I would like to see some genuine accountability, even if it's late. I would also like to make it clear that just because I wish for it, it doesn't mean that she's in any way obligated to do so. That's something between herself and her conscience. That said, I would like to thank you all for hearing me out. See you in the next video.